Temecula, California, population 105,000. Strategically located in an inland valley midway between the sprawling suburbs of San Diego and Los Angeles, it's one of the fastest growing and most affluent communities in the region. Over 3/4 of the families who live here are white, with a median family income of more than $80,000. Pharmaceutical and medical supply companies are the big employers. The lush Temecula Valley is home to over 30 vineyards and home to a small but growing community of Muslims.
The community started in 1998, 99, and in a few families get together and they want to perform the religious services on Friday, and they carry on for a year or so until they find a place in Old Town here in Temecula, and they rented the space like 1,200 square feet and a small little office to get together with their families for that purpose, establishing the prayers and getting to know each other. We conducted the services there for about 2-3 years, and then the place became small and more people get to know and participate in the service, and then we moved to the current place where we are right now, this industrial place. So the Islamic Center here and the religious services that we conduct for the people around here, it became a necessity as much as a needed for a social aspect of the people's life. People want to get to know each other, their families, their children, and they want to associate. So we have Pakistani associate with Pakistani, some Arabs associate with Arabs, Afghanis, Afro-American, Ethiopians, and other people, people from all over. And for those who need some religious counseling and religious advice and social as well counseling, so the Islamic Center is really needed, and that's how it grew on to be. Now we are renting this place for the last 7-8 years, and we're spending a lot of money on the rental. And we do have a piece of land from 2000. We purchased that piece of land with the intention of building our own Islamic Center, mosque, and other services that we can provide for the people in that land. So we thought a couple years ago that why not we initiate the process of start developing that land into an Islamic Center.
But in the summer of 2010, plans to build the new mosque encountered an obstacle.
With bullhorns, American flags, and cardboard signs denouncing Islam, about 24 protesters showed up across the street from the Islamic Center in Temecula just as worshipers were arriving to pray. They're protesting because the Islamic Center wants to build a mosque right here in the city.
Most of the people involved in the mosques are not the saints they claim they are.
I just don't agree with their beliefs.
Okay, don't they have freedom of religion though?
They do have freedom of religion just like we do, but that's not what this is about.
I have witnessed what happens to many nations in the world. By expansion of Islamic ideology, they destroy the community, destroy the country.
You know, the thing is, it was a small group, but this is part of, again, the Tea Party in general, a national movement in this country that's grown considerably. And this happened this summer in the context of several other protests against mosques. There was one in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and the big one that everyone heard about was the community center in downtown in New York City that everyone termed that said it was at the site of the 9/11, the World Trade Center, when in fact it wasn't. But it's also known as Park 51. It's basically a Muslim community center.
If they built this mosque here in 10 years, believe me, in 10 years, using taqiyya, using Islamize of this country, in America, you cannot stop them. You cannot stop the Islam at this time. It's gonna be too late.
So it happened, you know, in the context of that. So you had this general climate this summer where these protests against mosques were happening. And the important thing to keep in mind with the Tea Party is that they have been sort of the main instigators of a lot of these protests and the driving force behind them. They have ties to other far-right groups that are even sort of more dangerous and more racist and more Islamophobic. Specifically, the Riverside Tea Party, on their website, they cite this group ACT for America as sort of one of their campaigns is on their website for a stronger security in the United States, stronger defense. And this group ACT has become so has grown in size and influence over the last year and a half, so much so that they have an office and a representative and a lobbyist in DC and in Congress, and they are taking credit for the passage of a ballot initiative in Oklahoma banning the use of Sharia law. A lot of the far-right groups are making connections to them, like this group ACT. Other neoconservative groups that were sort of behind the Bush administration and the drive for war in Iraq, and in general the war on terror, or as they like to call it, sort of the endless war. Some of these are groups, the Center for Security Policy, run by a guy named Frank Gaffney. There's David Horowitz's Freedom Center, other Jihad Watch, other organizations that have much more sort of influence and power than a lot of the sort of populist or grassroots kind of Tea Party groups. But the important thing is that the alliances are being made and connections, and the connection is this Islamophobia. Aubrey Chernick is a wealthy he owns a software security company in the LA area, and he has been a key funder of a lot of the groups that have played a key role in whipping up the anti-Islamic feelings, the protests against the mosques, and other groups like it that have played an important role in disseminating sort of false information about Muslims and whipping up this Islamophobia.
America is not the only country where hostilities to Muslims is found. In a November 2009 referendum, Swiss voters passed a constitutional amendment banning minarets.
The Swiss vote, in fact, against the minaret, that was, there are two specificities there one should not forget. The Swiss people voted not with the 400,000 Muslims who live in Switzerland in their mind, because they don't even know them, especially because they are not very visible. They don't disturb anybody, so you don't see them. They voted with the so-called Muslims they see on television, but it was a specific bad moment, very badly prepared, not really debated. Also, with the Swiss public sphere was overloaded by other issues, so these issues was really not well discussed, and that's why it happened. And you have also in Switzerland a nationalistic tendency of 30%, like in Denmark, in Holland, in nearly every European state. And this is not positive. But the minaret itself, this is not even. This is just the expression of a problem, but not a real problem. You know, the Islam is an old part of Europe. It's not something new. New is for some country this aggressiveness, and this for some countries it's new and they are especially aggressiveness. But the point is that Europe has to integrate diversity. Diversity is in fact one of the European elements. You can't exclude anybody of the European diversity, especially not a religion which whose presence is very old in, and European civilization owes a lot to Islam, to Muslims, and to Islamic culture. You can't think Europe without Islam. That's the point. And perhaps you can also say that in some European countries we have to point that integration is confused, or is even is not really differentiated between integration and assimilation. For instance, in Finland, they have in Scandinavian states you have a homogeneous main society, and Finland, for instance, only has 3% foreigners and very few asylum seekers, refugees. So they are now for the first time confronted with an integration question, an integration problem, which they did not know before. That multiculturalism is that our modern societies have different cultures, and integration does not mean to give up your culture, but to integrate on the basis of the constitutional and the constitutional polity. You are part of a bigger community, but you stay. You maintain your culture. For instance, in France, it's a specific problem where you have in the old colonies who became part of the French nation after their independence. They always had a big Muslim community, but they did not integrate it. That's the point. Mm-hmm. And today you have suburbs which are economically awfully, where it's very difficult to make a living, and those who have the most difficulties, these are the young people who belong to the Muslim community. And this is for France. This is one of the biggest problems. They don't know how to manage it. And since 9/11, in this sense, every Muslim pays a huge price. And this is true for Europe and for the United States, when I understand the United States correctly. And this problem for them increased by the economic crisis.
The Temecula protests and the Tea Party in general, and the protests around the country against mosques, one thing that is clearly, it's led to an increase in not only verbal attacks on Muslims, where Muslims, I constantly face it. Every Muslim, I think, faces these things. But it's I think what's scarier to us is the atmosphere that's created is led to physical attacks. Women having their hijab, their scarves being pulled off their heads. Kids being bullied and beaten at schools. And, of course, I think the big story that everyone heard was the taxi driver in New York City this summer who, in the height of these protests against the Muslim community center there, a passenger got in and said, are you a Muslim? And once he said he was, he stabbed him and nearly killed him.
What is the number of Islamic terrorists? 1%? I think it's closer to 10%, but the rest of the PC world will tell you, oh no, it's minuscule. Okay, well, let's take you at your 1%. Look at the havoc 1% of Muslims causing in the rest of the world.
Debris flew in every direction. IEDs remain the #1 killer of U.S. troops in Iraq.
And here in the U.S., it's, they're seeing this, they're seeing their American soldiers being killed. They're seeing more terrorist attacks as a result of this war. But their conclusions, a lot of people's conclusions are not that, these wars are driving this, but that these are evil people. This is an evil religion, a violent religion That's the sort of mantra of the Tea Party and the far right, is that it's a violent, it's not even a religion, it's a political system, a violent political system that's trying to take over the American way of life or destroy the American way of life. And so that's what's sort of created the basis for then groups like the Tea Party and some of these other far right groups to come in and say, yeah, these Muslims are really, you know, this is, they're creating the problems, they're trying to take over, you know, we have to do something about them. And it's you know, a diversionary tactic at a time when there's a massive economic crisis. It's useful to people like Peter King and other congressmen and others to have something like this to take away, not, you know, so people aren't worried about, you know, where their next paycheck's going to come from, but you know, the fact that they're, you know, someone is plotting to destroy them or whatever. So I think that's what's sort of allowed those seeds to grow.
Unfortunately, the misunderstanding and politicizing of the Islamic religion worldwide after 9/11 brought a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes, and brought it into what some people will term it a political Islam and a violent Islam and things like that. I see it as a contrary. If we are to really be critical, Muslims for the last 200 years are occupied, oppressed, mistreated from the subcontinent of India all the way to Morocco. We were occupied by all these Western powers, and so much resources have been drawn away, and people intentionally being brought into this level of ignorance and lack of development. Consequences of all this, unfortunately, extreme elements pop up, like, you know, the Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, and other groups who take violent means to achieve their political ends. And unfortunately, most of the Muslim world and population brush with that misconception that they are violent. The truth comes so soon, sooner than what people probably think over the last 10 years, that in a major revolution like in Tunisia and in Egypt, the population shows high restraints from any violence against each other or against other groups, whether they are different faith or different political affiliation or even just different. That means the nature of the people and the nature of the values and religion that they believe in, especially in the Middle East and those places, is not violent by nature, as so many people like to think and authorize and start talking about.
Today's sting is the latest in a string of successful undercover operations by the government in the last 2 years. Last month, in a carbon copy of this case, 19-year-old Mohammed Osman Mohammed was arrested after his attempt to detonate a fake car bomb supplied to him by FBI agents right before a tree lighting ceremony in Portland, Oregon. Others include a 19-year-old Jordanian national arrested after he attempted to blow up this Dallas office tower, and 4 New York men apprehended for plotting to attack a New York synagogue.
So there's this whole series of these cases, and this is an important part of the campaign. I would say more dangerous, because this is really what, you know, creates that fertile ground for the Tea Party and these other far-right groups to then come in and point to. Because even Bill O'Reilly in his show is talking about, you know, we've had 20 attempted attacks in this country. You know, these are all, basically he's counting all these cases where the FBI sent in informants, you know, usually it's alienated youth, you know, possibly people out of prison, and where they rile them up and say, you know, we'll give you what you need to carry out an attack, and get them to do everything, and then they arrest them. These are not people who would on their own be able to carry out anything. There's a case in California where a mosque where an informant went in, they basically had to have a restraining order against him because he was being so riling things up and stuff. And so, but this campaign really, you could locate it to where it really coincides with being able to justify an increase in escalation in war in Afghanistan and the drone war in Pakistan. The other important thing about sort of Islamophobia is not just the far right, but people in general buy into ideas like for Afghanistan, even though there's sentiment against the war and against the occupation, people basically buy into the fact that the alternative, the Taliban are the alternative, and they're much worse than the US. And essentially that is a very Islamophobic idea. I mean, first of all, we don't know this idea that women's rights will be totally curtailed, as if right now, women are living well in Afghanistan.
In December 2010, the Temecula Planning Commission held a public hearing to determine the legality of the proposed mosque construction.
Wiley Drake. I would encourage you to take a walk with me down praierlive.com and 9/11 Christian Center if you want to see the effects of a mosque. I would take you back to 9/11 for the effects of a mosque. And I would ask you to consider not only the land use, but I would ask you to consider the use and what this mosque will cause, as other mosques have caused all across this country, as well as what the mosque have caused for the Muslim that's in the White House today.
I'm begging you, gentlemen and lady, please get yourself knowledgeable about what Sharia law is. There are apostates here in the United States that were former Muslim people, from other countries that have been overwrought and overrun by Sharia law, and that's why they're here in the United States trying to inform people here and explaining what it is. And for those of us in the United States of America that don't believe that it's going to happen and that we can be overrun, we are being told on the news by certain individuals that the flag of the Muslims will be flown over the White House one day.
Their holy book describes all Americans as infidels and school their children to hate us. I don't understand that the other churches can accept them. They are not only our enemy, but pagans. Why would we want them in our own backyard? Thank you.
Contrary to certain groups fighting what they call the Islamization of America, no religious war can trump the Constitution. All Americans are free to practice their faith according to the laws of their faith. As Catholics under the canon law, Jews under the Jewish law, and Muslims under the many variations of the Islamic law, Sharia. But if and when these laws conflict with American law prevails. It is not an American tradition to accept tenets of our laws only when they are convenient.
Inside of my Bible, I carry also the Declaration of Independence. And within that document, it does say that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. We cannot allow fear to dictate our public policy. We have a constitution, we have a freedom of religion, and we stand in wonderful acclaim of those who want to share that wonderful gift. Thank you, sir.
I was born in Israel, and today I'm an American citizen. But when I was in Israel in high school, I learned about the US history and also the history of the Jewish people. I want to report to you, when I learned about the US history, we learn about the United States is a example in the world for religious tolerance and democracy that many countries respected, including in Israel. When I came to the United States and I saw the different churches, synagogue, mosque, I told myself that what I was learning in high school in Israel is correct. However, last year I was very much disturbed by voices in this country of individuals, groups, and some in the media who express extreme intolerance when it comes to Muslim religion. When I swear to be a citizen of the United States, I swear also to the Constitution of the United States that include the religious freedom. And I believe in all my heart that this piece of document of the Constitutions is the best guarantee that even there are those who don't have this tolerance to this religion or this religion. Those appeared in the history of my people that we have been denied to express our religious freedom. We were denied to be in a synagogue. But today, in the United States, we do enjoy this, and we believe that all the religious people, regardless who they are, should be protected by the Constitution of the United States. And for those in the back who have been expressed intolerance, I'm telling you again, think again what exactly you're doing. You're doing damage not to the Islamic people here, to American Muslims. You're doing damage to yourself because, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys. 30-year resident of this community, and probably going on 12 years on this commission. I don't think I can remember an issue that raised the kind of hatred I saw today. And I'm, as a citizen, and not as a commissioner, but as a citizen, I'm somewhat ashamed and somewhat flabbergasted by the kind of rhetoric I heard. I know it has nothing to do with the issue, but I feel like I've got holes in my tongue from biting it when I'm hearing some of the things that came out today. You know, ignorance, and I don't mean ignorance of meaning intelligence, I mean ignorance of the facts breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, and unfortunately I saw a lot of that today. And I hope that was just an anomaly, that that's not part of the community we live in, and I hope we don't see it again.
And a second, the motion, and Mr. Guerrero, and the second was Mr. Kite, correct?
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
The vote was unanimous. The way was now clear for Temecula's Muslim community to build their long-awaited mosque.